online shoppers. I've got a really awesome idea. You can use this LunaBean hand casting kit if you are celebrating an anniversary, if you are celebrating a family, if you are celebrating a new baby. This is a really unique gift that is truly one of a kind, because what you create with this is something that can never be repeated afterwards. This is going to let you do a hand cast of someone or a group of people who are important to you, where you would create a mold, fill the mold with plaster, and have this beautiful plaster cast afterwards that you can keep to commemorate special family moments. Now this one comes in two sizes. This is the couples or the large size, and they also do an extra large or a family size. Let's take a look at this one and see how it's put together, what's in the kit, and how you go about using it. First of all, we have to get into the bucket. So we have to open it up back here. There's a little tab. Open up the tab like this. First thing you get is the instructions for how to do the LunaBean casting stone. This is going to be super important, so make sure you read this thoroughly before you open and start anything. Everything in here is time sensitive, so if you don't read the instructions till you're in the middle of doing it, you could run the risk of things setting up before you're actually ready for them to set up. Now this is a two-part procedure here. First of all, you get this little kit with all of the things that you're going to need. There's a garbage bag, there's nitrile gloves, there's a paintbrush, there's some sealant, and also some sanding pads. This here is the step one, and it is the molding powder. So this is going to be the powder that you mix with water in order to get the molding medium that you're going to put your hands in, or whatever other objects you decide you want to put in here. And this one right here is the casting stone. And this is step two. And I love that they're labeled because that way you can't get confused. This is what you do after you have the molding medium all mixed in with water and ready for your hands. This is step one. Now you have to follow the instructions for this specifically, because this molding powder needs a very specific amount of water added to it in order for the molding medium to turn out appropriately. What they suggest is 10 cups of water added into this bucket right here. And then from the 10 cups of water, molding mixture can be added a little bit at a time, and the suggested method for mixing is actually a metal whisk. We have added the water, we have stirred this up. Now, here's something interesting. When you open up this package, the powder in here is a really nice creamy off-white color, but as soon as water hits it, it turns bright pink. Now that bright pink is important to keep an eye on, because the color of the mixture is going to tell you how close the mixture is to setting, which means that's when you can put your hands in. Once you have the molding powder all mixed in with the water, they suggest that you pick the bucket up a couple times and just drop it on the counter to help release any trapped air bubbles. Now it's not going to mix completely lump free. You just have to make sure that everything is well mixed, and that when you go like this, that air bubbles come up. Now, as the color starts to change, you are getting closer to the time when it will be prepared for setting. The suggested mixing time for this powder is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 3 minutes. Once you have done that, your mixture will have turned the brightest color of pink, and it is almost ready for you to put your hands in, or whatever else you are going to do for molding. They say that having your hands wet is a really good idea. The other thing they say that can be helpful to help your hands move around and actually then be removed afterwards is a light coating of baby oil. So get your hands wet, put the baby oil on, really thoroughly distribute the baby oil, and then when you see the mixture start to turn a lighter pink, submerge your hands. Now, they say to make sure that your hands are not touching the bottom or the sides of the bucket, because then the mold isn't going to work properly. You want to make sure that your hands are really, really well placed in the middle of the bucket. When you see the color on the surface of the mold of the casting medium turn the lightest color pink and then go right back to that nice creamy off-white color, that is when your mold is almost ready. Now, when you put your hands in, you have somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 minutes that you have to stay there while the mold sets around your hands. When you see the surface turn that light creamy color again, if you were to touch it with your finger and your finger comes away without it sticking to it, that's an indication that the medium has set and that you can, within the next minute or two, start to break the seal and wiggle your hands out of the bucket so that you can move on to the next step. When it is time to remove your hand from the bucket, they suggest you start wriggling around your fingers just to try and loosen it. Now, we didn't open up this package, but if we open up this package, there are some tools inside that can help you. There is a wooden tongue depressor, which you can use to slide down into the mold and just pry open the space between your hand and the mold mixture. That will help to break the seal, and it will help you to get your fingers, it will help you to get your hands out easier. Now, if by some chance you don't have time to do the casting stone after you've done the mold, you have a 24-hour window. You can actually just put the lid on and store the mold in the fridge for 24 hours, as long as you come back within those 24 hours to put in the casting stone. The next stage of this involves adding this casting stone to 3 cups of cool water. Now, a word of advice, when you start mixing this, they suggest that you take a small amount of the casting stone powder and set it aside so that if you have any patching to do, when you take the casted stone out of the mold, you have some of the casting material left over. So you have your mold in here, you've mixed this all up. Now, you don't have a lot of time before this starts to set up, so you want to work pretty quickly. When you have this all mixed up nice and uniformly and beat together, you're going to pour it into your mold. Now, you know how sometimes things don't get into all the corners? You're actually going to want to move your mold around in a circular fashion with some little taps and bangs on the bottom, or maybe even on the surface where you're working, to make sure that the casting stone settles into all the little nooks and the crannies of the mold inside. They suggest that you fill this somewhere between a half to a third filled, and then start doing the tapping and the dropping so that it does get everything into all the cracks. When you're stirring up the casting stone mixture, after about 3 to 4 minutes, you're going to see the mixture start to stiffen up. That means it's time to pour it. When you pour it into the mold, you have no more than about 5 minutes to get everything where you want it before this isn't going to pour very easily anymore, and your job is going to get significantly more difficult. Now, word of caution, if you end up with leftover casting stone mixture, don't pour it down the sink. You're going to want to pour it into the bag that this comes with, and you can see that right here, they actually do provide for you a garbage bag to dispose of your mold and of any additional casting stone material that's left over. 5 to 6 minutes to get all the casting stone mixture into the mold, and then you leave it. At every stage, giving it a little tap along the sides to free up those trapped air bubbles. The casting stone is going to take somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 hours to completely set up. This is the part where you're going to have to be patient. You've poured your casting stone in, you've bounced the bucket around, and now you have to patiently wait for 2 to 3 hours before you can take it out of the mold. Now, if by some chance you don't have time to take it out of the mold, they suggest that at the 2 to 3 hour mark, they suggest that you put the lid on, turn it upside down, and store it that way with some paper towels or something in the top to absorb any of the excess water, at which point then you can remove the towels and the lid for the bucket and break the casting mold away, revealing your sculpture inside. They strongly caution against waiting longer than 24 hours to take your casting stone out of the mold. Once you've taken your art out of the mold, now's the time to do all the finishing of the product. When you take it out, your product could potentially be rough, and there could also still be a few air pockets. You remember how I told you to hold back that powder? Well, that powder can be mixed up and painted into the holes with the paintbrush to make sure that you get a nice smooth surface. If you have to do that, then I would suggest you set it aside for another hour or two to let that dry. Once that's done, you can take your finished product and you can run it under water and smooth off all the edges and rinse it off really well. And then you set it aside in a room that has very good airflow, preferably in front of a window where it can get some sunshine, for the next 7 to 10 days. That will allow the sculpted stone to fully cure, and at that point you can look at what way you want to finish your stone. Also in this little kit that they give you is a sealant that you can use for the final stages of your product. You have this clear sealant here, and also you have these little sandpaper discs. So what you can do is you can sand off any rough edges on the surface of your art, and then you can use the paintbrush and this sealant to cover the entire sculpture and get it ready for display. Now this is a really cool kit, and there are so many different applications that you can use it for. You can use it for your child's hands, you can use it as a family sculpture, you can use this with the person that you love, which makes this a great idea for Valentine's Day or an anniversary. It also works really well as a new baby gift. This is such an awesome gift that is truly unique and one of a kind. The instructions are straightforward, and I can already predict this is going to be a family favorite at my house.